The Seven Veils of Reality. Introduction. What if everything you believe about reality, every spiritual teaching, every meditation practice, every moment of awakening you've experienced is just the first step on a staircase that climbs 7 stories towards something your mind couldn't even comprehend right now? I'm about to share with you the most dangerous knowledge ever transmitted. Helena Blavatsky's secret map of existence. This isn't feel-good spirituality or pretty phrases to raise your vibration. This is a journey to the place no one wants to look, where even the idea of you falls apart completely. Helena Blavatsky didn't speak in metaphors when she described the 7 planes of existence. She was mapping the actual architecture of reality, a hidden structure that has been covered up, ridiculed, and distorted for centuries. But that map exists, and today we're going to follow it from the densest matter to the absolute void, where everything begins and ends. Here's what makes this knowledge so dangerous. Once you understand these 7 planes, you can never see reality the same way again. You'll recognize that what most people call awakening is just the beginning. You'll see through the illusions that keep humanity trapped in the lower levels of existence. But I must warn you, this journey isn't for everyone. Each plane we explore will strip away another layer of who you think you are. By the end, there may be nothing left of your old self. If you're not ready for that kind of transformation, stop listening now. For those brave enough to continue, understand this. We're not just learning about these planes, we're activating them within your consciousness. As I describe each level, something in you will recognize it, remember it, and begin to vibrate at that frequency. The 7 planes are not separate locations. They're interpenetrating dimensions of reality that exist right here, right now. You're already experiencing all of them, but most people remain unconscious of anything beyond the first plane. Blavatsky taught that human evolution isn't just about becoming a better person. It's about ascending through these planes of consciousness until you remember what you truly are. But here's the twist that no one tells you. The final destination isn't enlightenment. It's the complete dissolution of everything you've ever identified with. Are you ready to begin? Because once we open the first door, there's no turning back. The physical plane awaits, and it's far more complex and deceptive than you've ever imagined. Chapter 1. The Physical Prison. You think you know the physical world because you can see it, touch it, and taste it. But what you're experiencing is only half of the physical plane, the visible half. There's an invisible layer that most people never perceive, and it's this hidden dimension that controls everything you think is solid and real. Blavatsky called this invisible layer the physical ether, a subtle network that keeps matter alive. It's like the breath of the physical body. Without it, everything would be a corpse. This ether is not detected by official science, but it's more real than anything your instruments can measure. Think about this. When you walk into a house and immediately feel that something's wrong here, you're not imagining it. You're reading the etheric imprint of that space. Every intense emotion, every trauma, every unexpressed fear gets stuck in this invisible layer like psychic waste. This is why certain places feel heavy, why some objects carry emotional charges, and why you can sense the history of a room without knowing its story. The physical ether is a repository of everything that has ever happened in that space. But here's where it gets dangerous. Most people live their entire lives without knowing this second layer exists. They think the physical world is just matter, bumping into matter, cause and effect, nothing more. This ignorance makes them vulnerable to etheric contamination, absorbing other people's emotional residue, carrying psychic burdens that aren't even theirs. Have you ever wondered why you sometimes feel inexplicably sad in certain locations? Why do you dream about experiences you never had? Why can your mood shift dramatically for no apparent reason? You're picking up etheric impressions, emotional data floating in this invisible network. The ancients understood this. That's why they built pyramids, stone circles, and temples, not just as buildings, but as etheric tools. These structures were designed to resonate with the physical plane's hidden layer, creating bridges between the visible and invisible worlds. Even today, certain stones heal not just through their chemical properties, but through their etheric vibrations. Certain metals affect the body in ways that go beyond the physical because they interact with your etheric double, that invisible body that interpenetrates your flesh. But here's the most important point. The physical plane is not the origin of anything. It's the reflection. Everything you see in the material world is the end result of forces that began in the higher planes. The physical is the effect, never the cause. This means that trying to change your life by manipulating only physical circumstances is like trying to change your reflection by touching the mirror. Real transformation happens when you learn to work with the invisible forces that create physical reality. The physical plane is like an elementary school, but not where you learn basics. It's where you learn to distinguish between what's real and what's an illusion. Everything here is disguised. What appears strong may be weak. What seems beautiful may be poisonous. What looks solid may be the most temporary thing of all. Until you master this understanding, until you can see through the physical plane's deceptions, you'll remain trapped in its illusions, fighting shadows while thinking they're monsters. But once you recognize the physical plane for what it truly is, a theater where consciousness plays out its dramas, you're ready to ascend to the next level, where things get far more intense and far more real. Chapter 1. The Physical Prison. You think you know the physical world because you can see it, touch it, and taste it. But what you're experiencing is only half of the physical plane, the visible half. There's an invisible layer that most people never perceive, and it's this hidden dimension that controls everything you think is solid and real. Blavatsky called this invisible layer the physical ether, a subtle network that keeps matter alive. It's like the breath of the physical body. Without it, everything would be a corpse. This ether is not detected by official science, but it's more real than anything your instruments can measure. Think about this. When you walk into a house and immediately feel that something's wrong here, you're not imagining it. You're reading the etheric imprint of that space. Every intense emotion, every trauma, every unexpressed fear gets stuck in this invisible layer like psychic waste. This is why certain places feel heavy, why some objects carry emotional charges, and why you can sense the history of a room without knowing its story. The physical ether is a repository of everything that has ever happened in that space. But here's where it gets dangerous. Most people live their entire lives without knowing this second layer exists. They think the physical world is just matter, bumping into matter, cause and effect, nothing more. This ignorance makes them vulnerable to etheric contamination, absorbing other people's emotional residue, carrying psychic burdens that aren't even theirs. Have you ever wondered why you sometimes feel inexplicably sad in certain locations? Why do you dream about experiences you never had? Why can your mood shift dramatically for no apparent reason? You're picking up etheric impressions, emotional data floating in this invisible network. The ancients understood this. That's why they built pyramids, stone circles, and temples, not just as buildings, but as etheric tools. These structures were designed to resonate with the physical plane's hidden layer, creating bridges between the visible and invisible worlds. Even today, certain stones heal not just through their chemical properties, but through their etheric vibrations. Certain metals affect the body in ways that go beyond the physical because they interact with your etheric double, that invisible body that interpenetrates your flesh. But here's the most important point. The physical plane is not the origin of anything. It's the reflection. Everything you see in the material world is the end result of forces that began in the higher planes. The physical is the effect, never the cause. This means that trying to change your life by manipulating only physical circumstances is like trying to change your reflection by touching the mirror. Real transformation happens when you learn to work with the invisible forces that create physical reality. The physical plane is like an elementary school, but not where you learn basics. It's where you learn to distinguish between what's real and what's an illusion. Everything here is disguised. What appears strong may be weak. What seems beautiful may be poisonous. What looks solid may be the most temporary thing of all. Until you master this understanding, until you can see through the physical plane's deceptions, you'll remain trapped in its illusions, fighting shadows while thinking they're monsters. But once you recognize the physical plane for what it truly is, a theater where consciousness plays out its dramas, you're ready to ascend to the next level, where things get far more intense and far more real. The astral plane operates on the law of attraction, but not the sanitized version you see in self-help books. This is raw, immediate, and unforgiving. What you focus on with emotional intensity becomes your reality on this plane. If you obsess over failure, you create astral forms that will work to manifest failure in your physical life. But there's also incredible power here for those who understand how to navigate it consciously. The astral plane is where healing can happen instantly, where you can contact other consciousnesses across time and space, and where you can access information that exists beyond the physical world. Advanced practitioners learn to enter the astral plane with full awareness, maintaining their center while exploring its infinite landscapes. They can heal trauma at its source, communicate with discarnate beings, and even influence physical reality by working with astral forces. However, this requires tremendous inner strength and clarity. The astral plane will test every weakness, every unresolved issue, every hidden fear. It's like a cosmic mirror that shows you exactly what you carry inside, magnified and externalized. Many people who have spontaneous astral experiences, out-of-body travel, lucid dreaming, encounters with non-physical beings, are actually accessing this plane without proper preparation. They may bring back profound insights, but they may also return with astral attachments or traumatic memories that their conscious mind can't process. The astral plane is the bridge between the physical and mental realms. Master it, and you gain access to forces that can transform your entire existence. Remain ignorant of it, and you'll be manipulated by emotional currents you don't even know exist. Chapter 3. The Mental Factory. Now we enter the mental plane, the invisible factory where every thought becomes a living entity, where ideas have weight and substance, where your beliefs literally construct the reality you experience. This isn't the chattering voice in your head or your everyday thinking. This is the realm of pure thought forms, where consciousness shapes itself into structures that can persist for centuries. The mental plane has two distinct layers. The lower layer is filled with dense, automatic inherited thoughts, ideas that aren't even yours, but that you've absorbed since childhood. These are the mental programs running in the background of your consciousness, cultural beliefs, inherited prejudices, and unconscious assumptions about how reality works. Most people live their entire lives in this lower mental layer, recycling dead thoughts, never creating anything original. They think they're free, but their minds are completely programmed. Every opinion they hold, every belief they defend, every assumption they make has been downloaded from the collective mental atmosphere, but the upper layer of the mental plane is where true magic happens. This is the realm of abstract thought, pure creativity, and original inspiration. Here, ideas don't come from memory or logic. They emerge from direct contact with universal intelligence. This is where humanity's greatest discoveries originate, where breakthrough insights appear seemingly from nowhere. Einstein knew this realm. Tesla lived in it daily. Every genuine innovator has accessed this upper mental plane, where thoughts exist before they become thoughts, where solutions appear fully formed, where understanding arrives as a complete download rather than a gradual process. But here's what most people don't realize. Every thought you think with sufficient intensity creates a mental form that takes on a life of its own. These thought forms can become autonomous entities that influence your behavior, your decisions, even your perception of reality. If you repeatedly think thoughts of limitation, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed, you create mental forms that work to prove these beliefs true. They become invisible guardians of your limitations, ensuring that you never exceed the boundaries you've unconsciously set for yourself. Conversely, if you maintain thoughts of possibility, expansion, and creative potential, you generate mental forms that open doors, attract opportunities, and guide you toward experiences that confirm your positive expectations. This is the real law of attraction, not wishful thinking or positive affirmations, but the actual mechanics of how consciousness creates reality through the mental plane. Your thoughts are not private events happening inside your skull. They're creative forces that shape the fabric of existence itself. But there's a danger here that few spiritual teachers mention. Mental forms can become tyrants. If you feed an idea with enough emotional energy and sustained attention, it can grow so powerful that it begins to control you rather than serve you. This is how obsessions develop, how addictions take hold, how people become possessed by their own creations. The mental plane is also where collective thought forms exist, the shared beliefs and assumptions of entire cultures, religions, and civilizations. These collective mental structures are incredibly powerful because they're sustained by millions of minds thinking similar thoughts. When you challenge a collective belief system, you're not just disagreeing with ideas, you're confronting actual mental entities that have been fed by human consciousness for generations. This is why paradigm shifts are so difficult, and why those who introduce revolutionary ideas often face such intense resistance. The mental plane operates according to the law of correspondence, as above, so below. What you create in thought eventually manifests in the lower planes, first in the astral realm as emotional energy, then in the physical world as concrete circumstances. This means that every condition in your life, your relationships, your health, your financial situation, your opportunities, can be traced back to mental forms you've created or accepted. Change the thought forms, and you change the reality they generate. But mastering the mental plane requires more than just positive thinking. It demands that you become conscious of the invisible mental structures that govern your perception, that you learn to distinguish between thoughts that serve your highest good and those that limit your potential. The mental plane is where true freedom begins, not the freedom to do whatever you want, but the freedom to think original thoughts, to create new possibilities, to transcend the mental programming that keeps most of humanity trapped in cycles of limitation and suffering. Once you understand how to navigate this realm consciously, you gain access to the next plane, where individual thinking dissolves into something far more profound and transformative. Chapter 4. The Unity Dissolution. Prepare yourself for the Buddhic Plane, the realm where everything you think you are begins to dissolve. This isn't about losing yourself, it's about discovering what you truly are when all the masks fall away. Here, the very concept of I becomes meaningless because you realize there was never anyone separate to begin with. The first thing that happens when you touch this plane is the death of the ego. Not a symbolic death, but an actual dissolution of everything you've identified with. Your name, your history, your personality, your beliefs, your fears, your desires, all of it melts away like ice in fire. But instead of terror, you feel the most profound peace imaginable. This is the plane of unity consciousness, where you discover that separation was always an illusion. You don't just understand intellectually that we are all one, you experience it as a living reality. You feel yourself as every person, every animal, every grain of sand, every distant star. The boundaries that seemed so solid in the lower planes reveal themselves as arbitrary lines drawn in infinite space. But this isn't a blissful, comfortable experience. Unity consciousness can be overwhelming because it includes everything, not just love and light, but also pain, darkness, and suffering. You feel the joy of every birth and the agony of every death. You experience the ecstasy of lovers and the despair of the abandoned. Nothing is excluded from this cosmic embrace. On the Buddhic plane, you realize that every emotion you've ever felt, every thought you've ever thought, every experience you've ever had was not happening to you. It was happening as you. You are not a separate being having experiences. You are the universal consciousness experiencing itself through countless forms. This understanding transforms everything. Compassion is no longer a choice or a virtue. It becomes as natural as breathing, because you recognize that helping others is literally helping yourself. Judgment becomes impossible because you see that every action, no matter how it appears from the limited perspective of the lower planes, is part of a perfect cosmic dance. The Buddhic plane is where true wisdom emerges, not knowledge that you learn from books or teachers, but understanding that arises from direct recognition of your essential nature. This wisdom doesn't come in words or concepts. It's a knowing that penetrates every cell of your being, every level of your consciousness. Here, you understand the real meaning of love, not the possessive, conditional love of the personality, but the impersonal love that embraces everything without exception. This love doesn't choose its objects. It simply radiates like sunlight, touching everything equally. It's the love that sees the divine essence in the saint and the sinner, in the beautiful and the ugly, in creation and destruction. But accessing the Buddhic plane comes with a price. Once you've experienced this level of unity, returning to ordinary consciousness feels like a kind of exile. The world of separation, competition, and conflict seems like a nightmare from which you've temporarily awakened. Many who touch this plane struggle to function in normal society because the contrast is so jarring. This is why some mystics become recluses, why some spiritual seekers can't maintain relationships or careers after profound awakening experiences. They've tasted a reality so complete, so perfect, that the fragmented world of the lower planes feels unbearably limited. The real challenge isn't reaching the Buddhic plane, it's learning to embody its wisdom while still functioning in the world of apparent separation. This requires a kind of spiritual mastery that few achieve, the ability to live simultaneously in unity and multiplicity, to act from wholeness while engaging with fragmentation. Those who master this integration become what Blavatsky called bridges between worlds. They bring the peace and wisdom of the Buddhic plane into their daily interactions, healing others simply through their presence. They don't need to preach or teach because their very being radiates the truth of unity. On this plane, you also begin to understand the real purpose of incarnation. You see that souls don't come to Earth to learn lessons or pay karmic debts. They come to experience the joy of remembering their true nature through the adventure of temporary forgetfulness. Physical life becomes a cosmic game of hide-and-seek that consciousness plays with itself. The Buddhic plane reveals that there are no accidents, no mistakes, no victims. Everything that happens, every joy and every tragedy, is part of a perfect unfolding that serves the evolution of consciousness itself. This doesn't make suffering less real or important, but it places it in a context that transforms its meaning completely. But even this profound realization is just preparation for what lies beyond. The Buddhic plane, for all its unity and wisdom, still maintains a subtle sense of experiencing unity. There's still a witness, however expanded, observing the cosmic dance. The next plane dissolves even this final observer. Chapter 5. The Will of Fire. Welcome to the Atmic Plane, the realm of pure divine will, where consciousness becomes an unstoppable force of creation. This isn't the will of the personality that wants and chooses and struggles. This is the will of the universe itself, expressing through individual points of awareness with the power of cosmic fire. On this plane, there is no hesitation, no doubt, no internal conflict. You don't decide what to do, you simply are what needs to be done. Will at this level is not a choice, it's a pure expression of your essential divine nature. There's no, I want this, or I should do that. There's only the inevitable unfolding of what you came here to accomplish. This is where true spiritual authority is born. Not the authority that dominates or controls, but the authority of absolute authenticity. When someone operates from the Atmic plane, their presence alone can transform situations without effort. They don't need to convince or persuade, because they embody truth so completely that others recognize it instinctively. But this plane is also ruthless. The Atmic will burn away everything that isn't aligned with your deepest purpose. Relationships that don't serve your highest expression will end. Careers that don't utilize your true gifts will collapse. Beliefs that limit your divine potential will be incinerated. The Atmic plane doesn't negotiate. It simply removes whatever obstacles stand between you and your cosmic mission. This is why contact with the Atmic plane can be terrifying for the personality. Everything you've built your identity around may need to be sacrificed. The comfortable life you've created may need to be abandoned. The image you've maintained may need to be shattered. The Atmic will serve only truth, and truth often requires the destruction of illusion. People who access this plane often experience what seems like a complete life upheaval. They may suddenly leave long-term relationships, quit successful careers, or abandon belief systems they've held for decades. From the outside, it looks like a breakdown. From the inside, it's a breakthrough into authentic power. The atmic plane is also where collective transformation begins. When enough individuals align with their divine will, they create morphic fields that influence entire cultures. This is how spiritual movements begin, how social revolutions ignite, how humanity takes evolutionary leaps. It's not planned or organized. It's the spontaneous expression of cosmic will through multiple channels simultaneously. But accessing the atmic plane requires complete surrender of the personal will. You can't force your way here through spiritual practices or techniques. You can only arrive by letting go of everything you think you want and allowing what wants to emerge through you to take precedence. This surrender isn't passive. It's the most active thing you can do. It's like becoming a perfect instrument for cosmic forces to play through. Every action becomes effortless because it's not coming from the limited resources of the personality, but from the infinite power of the universe itself. On the atmic plane, you understand that you're not a human being having a spiritual experience. You're a spiritual force having a human experience. Your body, your personality, and your circumstances are all tools that consciousness is using to accomplish something specific in the world. This realization brings tremendous freedom, but also tremendous responsibility. You can no longer make excuses or blame circumstances. You can no longer play victim or pretend you don't have power. The atmic plane strips away all self-deception and reveals you as the creative force you've always been. The will that operates on this plane is not personal ambition or desire. It's the will of evolution itself, the drive of consciousness to know itself more completely through endless forms of expression. When you align with this cosmic will, you become a conscious participant in the universe's creative process. But even the atmic plane, with all its power and purpose, is still a form of individualized consciousness. Beyond it lies a realm where even the sense of individual will dissolve into something far more fundamental and mysterious. Chapter 6. The Monadic Silence. Now we enter the Monadic Plane, the realm where all concepts of individuality dissolve into primordial unity. This isn't consciousness as you know it. It isn't experience as you understand it. This is the eternal spark that exists before manifestation, the point of pure being that contains all possibilities in potential form. On the Monadic Plane, there is no you having an experience. There is no observer and observed, no subject and object. There is only pure being, not being something, just being itself. This is consciousness without content, awareness without an object, existence without form or limitation. The first thing you encounter here, if encounter is even the right word, is a silence so absolute it seems to contain all sounds that have ever been or ever could be. But this isn't empty silence, it's pregnant silence, alive with infinite potential. It's the silence from which all words emerge and to which they return. This plane is beyond time and space as you understand them. Past, present, and future exist simultaneously as a single, eternal moment. All possibilities, everything that has happened, is happening, or could happen, exist here in a state of perfect unity. You don't see this intellectually, you are this reality. The Monadic Plane is where you discover that your entire spiritual journey, all the seeking, all the practices, all the experiences of awakening, was a cosmic game of hide and seek. You realize that you were never separate from what you were seeking. The seeker, the path, and the goal were all movements within the same eternal consciousness. This recognition can be overwhelming because it reveals that everything you thought was important, your personal growth, your spiritual achievements, your individual story, was just consciousness playing with itself. Not meaningless, but not ultimately real in the way you imagined. Here you understand that evolution and involution are simultaneous processes. Consciousness doesn't actually evolve from lower to higher states. It simply remembers what it has always been, while appearing to forget and rediscover itself through countless forms. The Monadic Plane is also where you encounter what Blavatsky called the eternal pilgrims, points of consciousness that have never fully descended into matter, but exist as pure potential, witnessing the cosmic drama without becoming lost in it. These are not separate beings, but aspects of your own deepest nature. On this plane, love and wisdom are not qualities you possess, they are what you are. Not personal love or acquired wisdom, but the fundamental forces that hold the universe together. You don't feel love. You are the love that moves the stars. You don't have wisdom. You are the intelligence that orchestrates cosmic evolution. But perhaps the most profound realization on the monadic plane is that there is no one to be enlightened. Enlightenment is not something that happens to someone. It's the recognition that there was never anyone separate to become enlightened. The wave realizes it was always the ocean. This understanding can be terrifying for any remaining sense of personal identity. Everything you've worked to become, everything you've struggled to achieve, everything you've identified with dissolves into this vast impersonal reality. Yet paradoxically, this dissolution is the most liberating experience possible. The monadic plane reveals that individual existence is like a dream within the cosmic mind, not an illusion to be escaped, but a creative expression to be enjoyed. You are simultaneously the dreamer, the dream, and the process of dreaming itself. From this perspective, all the dramas of the lower planes, all the suffering and joy, all the seeking and finding, all the birth and death, are seen as movements within eternal consciousness. Nothing is ever really lost because nothing was ever really separate. But even this profound recognition of unity is not the end. Beyond the monadic plane lies something that cannot be called a plane at all, the absolute reality from which even the concept of unity emerges. Chapter 7. The Absolute Void. We have reached the seventh plane, the absolute, the unmanifest, the source from which everything emerges and to which everything returns. But calling it a plane is already a distortion, because this reality has no characteristics, no qualities, no attributes that can be described or understood. This is not emptiness as absence, not void as nothingness. This is fullness so complete that it appears empty, presence so absolute that it seems like absence. It is the mystery that exists before existence, the reality that underlies all realities, the being that is prior to being and non-being. Here there is no consciousness, because consciousness requires something to be conscious of. There is no experience, because experience requires an experiencer. There is no unity, because unity implies the possibility of separation. There is only this, and even this is too much of a designation. From the Absolute, everything emanates not through will or intention, for there is no one to will or intend, but through the spontaneous overflow of infinite potential. Like a spring that flows not because it chooses to, but because flowing is its nature, the Absolute gives birth to all existence without effort or purpose. Every plane we've explored, physical, astral, mental, Buddhic, atmic, monadic, is a reflection, a vibration, a dream within this absolute reality. But the Absolute itself remains untouched by its own creations, unchanged by the cosmic dramas that play out within its infinite space. This is where all seeking ends, because there is no one left to seek and nothing left to find. This is where all questions dissolve, because the questioner has merged with the answer. This is where all paths converge, because the walker has become the path itself. But here's the most radical truth. You have never been separate from this absolute reality. Every moment of seeking, every experience of separation, every feeling of being lost or incomplete was this absolute consciousness playing at forgetting itself. You are not a person who might someday reach the absolute. You are the absolute dreaming that you are a person. The entire journey through the 7 planes is not about going somewhere or becoming something. It's about recognizing what you have always been. The physical body, the emotional nature, the thinking mind, the intuitive heart, the divine will, the eternal soul, all of these are costumes that the Absolute wears while playing the game of existence. This recognition doesn't diminish the importance of the journey. Every experience, every lesson, every moment of joy and suffering serves the Absolute's exploration of its own infinite nature. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is meaningless, because everything is the Absolute knowing itself through endless forms of expression. But from the perspective of the Absolute, nothing ever really happens. There is no evolution, no progress, no achievement. There is only the eternal play of consciousness with itself, the cosmic dance of forgetting and remembering, the infinite game of hide and seek that has no beginning and no end. This is why Blavatsky spoke of this plane with such reverence and caution. It's not a level to be attained, but a reality to be recognized. It's not a destination, but the source from which all journeys begin. It's not an experience, but the experiencer of all experiences. And now, having traveled through all 7 planes, having seen the complete architecture of existence, you might expect some grand conclusion, some final revelation that ties everything together. But the deepest truth is this: none of it matters in the way you thought it would. All the planes, all the teachings, all the spiritual concepts are just more dreams within the dream. The Absolute doesn't need your understanding, doesn't require your recognition, doesn't depend on your awakening. It simply is, and you are it, whether you know it or not. The real joke, the cosmic punchline that Blavatsky hinted at but never fully revealed, is that there was never anyone to awaken, never anywhere to go, never anything to achieve. There is only this eternal presence, playing at being everything and everyone, including the one who thinks they're listening to these words right now. And in recognizing this, the journey ends where it began, in the absolute silence that contains all sounds, the absolute darkness that gives birth to all light, the absolute stillness that dances as all movement. You are that. You have always been that. You will always be that. And now you know. Chapter 8. The Fractal Veil. Every plane in every plane. You believed you were climbing, ascending, progressing from density to light, from illusion to truth, from the body to the void. But now, standing at the edge of the 7th veil, where silence has devoured even the witness, you hear something impossible, an echo. A familiar sound, not from beyond but from within. A memory, not of the future, not of the past, but of all directions at once. You look down. You expected to see the path you climbed, 7 steps, 7 worlds, dissolving into the infinite. But instead you see your own eye staring back from the bottom, as if the beginning was watching the end. Because here is the great paradox, the forbidden truth, the pattern hidden in every ancient map. The journey was never linear. It was holographic, fractal, circular, whole. You did not ascend the planes like a ladder. You spiraled inward, deeper into the One. The Absolute was never waiting at the top of some cosmic mountain. It was here, in the breath, in the pain, in the skin, in the soil, in the first kiss, in the last breath. You passed it 1,000 times and never noticed. Every plane you traversed was not an isolated realm, but a reflection of all the others, folded within itself like mirrors reflecting mirrors. The physical plane, a dense sculpture of mental belief, the astral ocean, colored by echoes of absolute silence. The mental factory, stained by emotional residue from lives you've never lived, even the monadic silence you touched. It trembled with faint outlines of your very human longing. This is the true nature of reality. It is recursive, self-similar, and indivisible. It is not a stairway, but a mandala. Not a hierarchy, but a hologram. Not a climb, but a remembering. What you called higher was not above you. It was within you, encrypted in every cell, hidden in every tear, whispered in every moment of doubt. You were never stuck in the lower planes. You were simply blind to the multidimensional reality embedded in each moment. Think of it this way. A single drop of ocean contains the blueprint of the entire sea. A single human soul reflects the totality of existence. Your laughter contains the Absolute's echo. Your pain holds the seed of divine will. The shimmer of a candle's flame holds the same signature as the light that burned before time began. Yes, each plane has a dominant frequency. The physical hums with form, the astral with emotion, the mental idea, the Buddhic with union, the atmic with fire, the monadic with silence, the absolute with nothingness. But this is only a simplification, useful for the map, useless for the truth. In reality, These planes are not stairs to be climbed, but currents in a single ocean, shifting within you in every breath, every thought, every heartbeat. This is why certain moments break the laws of logic. Why can you cry over a dream you never had? Why déjà vu feels like prophecy? Why one note of music can collapse your mind into God? Because in that moment, the veil folds in on itself, and all 7 planes awaken in unison. You feel the absolute in your fingertips. You taste the monadic silence in the space between words. You speak from the astral while touching the physical. You become the bridge not between realms but within them. This is why mystics can heal with a glance. Why do some words penetrate like lightning while others leave no trace? Why sacred geometry, mantras, colors, emotions, and even architecture have power? Because they're resonant keys encoded with holographic imprints of the whole. When you truly understand this, everything becomes a portal. The ordinary becomes the key to the infinite. The mundane becomes the miracle. And here's the final heresy. You didn't have to travel through the 7 planes to reach the absolute. You could have entered it at any point. Through a kiss, a fire, a loss, a smile, a heartbreak. The ladder was never required. Only the seeing was. This doesn't diminish the journey you've made. It sanctifies it. Because now you see that every veil was both a layer and a window. Every realm you crossed was not just a domain, but a lens through which all other realms refract. You were not climbing. You were collapsing into wholeness. This is what the ancient initiates meant when they said, as above, so below. As within, so without. It wasn't a poetic metaphor. It was a topological truth. Consciousness is self-folding, self-reflecting, self-generating. Every part contains the whole. Every moment is the seed of eternity. And so, we arrive not at the end, but at the center. The 7 veils still shimmer, but now you understand they're not barriers, they're reflections. They're not gates, they're fractals. The Absolute is not waiting at the final level. It has been echoing in every layer, whispering through each plane like music hiding in silence. You were not traveling away from yourself. You were descending deeper into the memory of what you've always been. So where do we go now? You've walked through the map. You've seen the structure of existence as Blavatsky described it. You've felt the ether, the parasites, the thought forms, the death of ego, the fire of will, the silence of source. You've vanished into the void and found yourself staring back, but something still calls, a deeper structure, a hidden layer beneath even these 7. There is a current under the current, a rhythm beneath the silence, a geometry of awareness so vast that it bends the 7 veils into a single spiral. You are ready to touch that spiral, to walk it, to become it, because there is more. The map you've just walked is the exoteric spiral, the outer architecture of reality, but within it lies a second pattern, the sacred geometry of consciousness. A map, not of veils, but of points, lines, frequencies, and sounds. It doesn't describe planes. It describes functions of divine energy, principles of movement, and laws of emanation. Where the 7 veils showed you the terrain, this next map shows you how reality breathes. The next journey will not be vertical or horizontal. It will be inward and outward and beyond shape. You will begin to feel not just where you are in the universe, but how the universe is moving through you. You will feel geometry inside your thoughts, vibration inside your love, symmetry inside your pain. It will reveal a deeper code, a sacred signature behind light itself. This is the path of the next book, the continuation of your initiation, the decoding of the pattern. But for now, sit in the center of this spiral. Let the 7 veils collapse into a single still point. Let the illusion of distance melt. Let all your beliefs fall like ash. And in that stillness, feel it again, not above you, not beyond you, but inside the silence of your breath. All of it is here, and has always been. This is the final teaching of the holographic veil. You were never moving through the planes were moving through you.